Some moments are too beautiful to break. A white church, a bride in tears of joy, a groom holding back his breath, and a congregation ready to witness love. But just before the vows, a man walked in, and the truth followed him. This is not just a wedding story, it is a storm wrapped in silence. And when it broke, no one left unchanged. Church, day, sunlight streamed through stained glass. Every window painted the pews in soft colors, purple, amber, blue. A hush lingered over the church like a held breath. The guests stood, turning toward the entrance. The music swelled. There she was, Grace, radiant, floating in white. Her father held her arm firmly, but her hands shook slightly. Whispered, "Guest," softly. "She looks just like her mother." The old woman nodded. The young girl smiled. At the altar, David stood frozen, 31, pressed suit, eyes glossy. His best man leaned close. "Best man. Bro, you okay?" David, barely audible. "I think I'm dreaming." The pastor smiled. Pastor James, mid-50s, silver hair, clean suit, gentle tone. He raised his hands as Grace stepped up to the altar. Pastor James, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered." Slam, the wooden doors flew shut behind them. Gasps, a sharp turn of heads. Music stopped. A stranger stood in the back. Dust clung to his clothes. Sweat soaked his chest. A torn shirt, scuffed shoes, but eyes that pierced. "Stranger, stop this wedding." The silence exploded into chaos. Murmurs rippled down each row. Grace clutched her father's arm. David stepped forward, fists slightly clenched. "Stranger," louder. "This man, this pastor, should be arrested." Phones came out. Whispers turned into noise. Guest, "Who is he?" Another, "Is this some kind of prank?" Another, soft gasp. "That's Daniel, isn't it?" The name floated. Heavy. Old. Church. Moments earlier. Flashback. Outside, Daniel had stood under the hot sun, dust on his face, a bottle of water in one hand. A boy nearby had asked, "Boy, are you lost?" Daniel, "No, I've just been quiet for too long." He looked up at the white cross above the church. Daniel, to himself, "She deserves to be heard, even if it's too late." Church, returned to present Grace's father, firm. "Who are you? What is this nonsense?" Daniel reached into his coat. The crowd shifted. He pulled out a photo, crumpled, torn at the edge. Daniel, "Recognize her?" He held it up. Eyes on Pastor James. The pastor squinted. His smile faded. Then, silence. Pastor James, voice flat. "Where did you get that?" Daniel, "You remember her, don't you? You said she was confused. You said she was broken. But she wasn't." He turned to the crowd. Daniel, calmly, "She was right. All along, he hurt her, lied to her, and then made the rest of us believe it was her fault." People began whispering louder. A woman covered her mouth. The string quartet quietly packed their instruments. David turned to Grace. "David, do you know this man?" Grace looked stunned. She opened her mouth, then closed it, but her eyes filled with something deeper than confusion. Recognition. Some secrets sleep quietly, until someone walks in and wakes them. A woman near the front leaned over to her husband. Woman, whispering, "That's the man who left town 10 years ago, after that scandal." Husband, "What scandal?" Woman, "You were overseas. You would not remember." The photo finally reached the front pew. An usher took it, passed it up. A black and white image, a younger woman, a tear on her cheek. Pastor James's hand trembled as he took it. Pastor James, to himself, "I buried this." Daniel, "But not deep enough. Weddings are meant to unite, but this one was about to divide." And every whisper in that room, every shifting glance, every skipped heartbeat was just the beginning. The photo shook in Pastor James's hand, his face stone, eyes darting between the stranger and the bride. Grace, "Pastor, what is going on?" No answer. Daniel, the man, Tell her who you really are." Gasps again. Some guests rose from their seats. Others leaned in. David, Groom, you need to leave. Daniel, I will, but not until she hears the truth. Some truths do not come wrapped in kindness. They come like thunder, sharp, loud, and impossible to ignore. Church, back pews, an elderly woman whispered to the guest beside her. Old woman, that is Daniel Osei. He used to sing in the choir. Years ago, before... Guest, before what? Old woman, before Pastor James called him a liar. Church, front row. Pastor James cleared his throat. Pastor James, measured. This man is not well. He has been gone for many years. Whatever story he tells, it is dangerous. It is false. Daniel, firm. Then deny it. Look her in the eyes and deny what you did. He turned to Grace. Daniel, your mother, Eleanor, was my sister. Grace froze. Grace, whispering. No, Daniel, yes. And she used to sit where you stand now, in that very pew, every Sunday. Flashback. Church, 10 years ago. The church is full. A young woman sits near the front. Grace's mother, Eleanor, eyes bright, voice strong. She sings hymns with devotion. The pastor passes by and places a hand on her shoulder. She flinches. Church, present Daniel, voice rising. She told me. She came to me in tears. She said he followed her after evening service, said he prayed for her, then touched her. Said God had chosen her for something greater. Gasps ripple again. The best man swore under his breath. David, is this true? Grace, to Pastor. Answer him, Pastor James. She was unstable. Everyone knew that. Daniel, she was a survivor. But you turned everyone against her, said she was imagining things, said she wanted attention, and then you humiliated her. Flashback. Town Square. Eleanor stands alone. Women walk past her, men whisper and shake their heads. Her brother, Daniel, tries to hold her hand, but she pulls away. Eleanor, quietly. No one believes me. He's their shepherd, and I'm just a girl with a broken past. Church. Return to present, Daniel. She left the church, left the town, and not long after she died. Heart failure, they said, but it was grief. It was a shame. Grace, voice shaking. She was my mother? Daniel, yes. She wanted to protect you, so she never told anyone. David, and you waited until now. Daniel, I have tried for years. Letters, calls, but no one listened. He looked straight at the congregation. Daniel, because he wore the collar, because he stood behind a pulpit, so the town believed him. A deacon steps forward, looks nervous. Deacon, there was a complaint a long time ago. It was dismissed. Grace's father, you knew? Deacon, there was no proof. Daniel, there was never proof, because he buried it all. Pastor James stares at the photo again. Pastor James, slow. She was beautiful. She wanted to serve, but she misunderstood things. She twisted my kindness. Daniel, rage rising. You abused your power. And now you're marrying our daughter. Do you even see how twisted that is? Sometimes silence is guilt wearing a mask. And when the mask slips, even the holy look human. A young woman stands, voice trembling. Young woman. I remember Eleanor. She helped in the children's ministry. She once told me the pastor made her uncomfortable. More women start whispering. Another voice, older, middle-aged woman. She said the same to me. I thought she was just emotional. Another guest. Maybe she was telling the truth all along. Grace takes a step toward Pastor James. Grace, cold. I came to you for guidance. All these years, did you see me as her or as your next target? Pastor James says nothing. Grace, voice breaking. Did you lie to me too? Pastor James, weakly. I never touched you. I swear, Daniel, that is not the point. You stood before God and lied to an entire town. You destroyed a woman and then kept preaching forgiveness from a pulpit you poisoned. The church was still, but the silence was no longer holy. It was haunted. A wedding was meant to happen here. Instead, a reckoning had begun. Church. Moments after Daniel's accusation, a suffocating silence fell over the church. You could hear breathing, shuffling feet, the sound of someone's ring tapping nervously on a hymnal. The wedding was forgotten. The bride's bouquet hung loose in her hand. David's clenched jaw trembled. Pastor James, still frozen near the altar, seemed smaller than ever before. Words once spoken cannot be unspoken, and truth, once released, has no master. David, to Grace, I do not understand. Your mother, she was the one he hurt. Grace, tears forming. I never knew. She never told me anything. Daniel, gently. She wanted to keep you safe. That is the kind of woman she was. Deacon Joseph, stepping forward. There were murmurs years ago, but no charges, no evidence. Daniel, cold, because he buried it, because power silences proof. Pastor James, quietly. I did no such thing. Church, center pews. More guests were standing now. One woman in her 50s raised a hand. Guest woman 1. I remember Elena too. She told me once, right after Bible study, that she was uncomfortable being alone in the same room with Pastor James. Guest woman 2 from across the aisle. She said the same to me. I thought she was just emotional. I thought... Her voice broke. Church, altar area. 5 minutes later, Grace walked slowly up to the pastor. Her steps were shaky, but her voice was steady. Grace, I trusted you. You counseled me when I was 17. You gave me advice on marriage. You prayed over me. She took another step forward. Grace, sharper. Was it real? Any of it? Or were you just keeping me close? Pastor James. I loved your mother. Daniel. No, you destroyed her. Grace, to Pastor. Then why didn't you come to her funeral? He did not answer. Flashback. Church office. 10 years ago. A tearful Eleanor is sitting across from Pastor James. Eleanor. You touched me without my consent, Pastor James. You are confused. You seek affection, and you misunderstand God's love. Eleanor. I trusted you. Pastor James, leaning forward. If you say these things, it will destroy the church. Think of the souls that depend on us. Think of your daughter. Eleanor, quietly. You're the one who should be afraid of God. Church, return to present. Grace backed away. Tears ran freely now. Grace, to congregation. All of you, you heard him preach forgiveness. But what about justice? Truth is not always clean. Sometimes it drags shame behind it. Sometimes it stains the carpet beneath your feet. The crowd was growing restless. People whispered. Some recorded on their phones. Guest man, to his wife, he baptized our daughter. What if? Guest woman, interrupting. Do not. Just don't. The tension spread like wildfire. It was no longer just about one girl. It was about every family, every whispered story they ignored. Church, Deacon's Corner. Deacon Joseph, to other church leaders. We need to call the elders. This cannot be ignored. Church elder, this is chaos. Daniel, hearing this. No. This is what accountability looks like. Uncomfortable, messy, but necessary. Church, wedding platform. Later, David stepped toward Grace. David, Grace, do you still want to go through with this? Grace whispers, how can I marry anyone when I do not even know who I am anymore? She removed her veil. Her hands trembled. Grace, to Daniel, I want to know everything. Daniel, softly, I will tell you everything. Every page she left behind, every word she never said out loud. Church, lobby. Minutes later, police officers entered the building. Someone had called them anonymously. Officer, we got a report about a disruption. Is there a Daniel Osei here? Daniel, I am here. Grace, stepping forward. He is not the criminal. You're looking at the wrong man. She pointed firmly at Pastor James. Murmurs grew louder. The officers looked at each other. Officer, sir, we need you to come with us for questioning. Pastor James nodded slowly. His legs barely moved. The robe of a pastor is not armor against truth. Church, outside, after police exit. Daniel and Grace stood outside on the steps. A few people had followed. Some offered apologies. Others avoided eye contact. Daniel. She was trying to protect you, even when she was falling apart. Grace softly. She must have been so alone. Daniel. She had me, but even I could not stop the town from turning against her. Grace. Then we will turn it back. Flashback. Grace. Age 10. Mother's room. Young. Grace watches her mother cry. Eleanor quickly wipes her face. Eleanor. Never trust someone just because they stand on a stage. She kisses Grace on the forehead. Church. Office. Later that day, Deacon Joseph locked the pastor's office door. Church elder. What now? Joseph. We clean house, we investigate, and we listen. This time. Church. Empty hall. Evening. The church was now quiet. No music, no laughter, no flowers, just pews and dust and the echo of a broken day. The wedding never happened, but something else did. A reckoning, a resurrection, not of love, but of truth. Church. Sunday, 1 week later. A different pastor stood at the pulpit. Grace sat in the back pew. Daniel beside her. A picture of Elena rested beside a candle. The sermon was short, simple, sincere. New pastor. This church apologizes for its silence. We failed our daughter. We failed a mother, but silence ends here. Grace looked up. Daniel held her hand. The unexpected consequence of truth is freedom, not just for the ones who speak it, but for all those who never believed. Grace's apartment, night, 2 days later. The room was quiet, too quiet. Grace sat at her desk, staring at her mother's photo. No makeup, no dress, just tired eyes and a bathrobe. Stacks of old letters lay beside her, some with dates, some with no envelopes, all written by Daniel. When the truth finally breaks through, it does not heal. Not right away. It stings. It rots everything it touches. And then it waits. Police station. Day. Grace sat across from a female investigator, holding her hands together tightly. Investigator, we reopened the file, but without physical evidence and with the primary victim deceased. Grace interrupting. He hurt her. There are witnesses. Letters. His silence alone. Investigator. Silence is not a confession. We need more than pain to prosecute. Grace whispers. You need a body, not a story. Grace's apartment. That night, Daniel entered with 2 cups of tea. She did not speak. He set the tea down and sat across from her. Daniel, I have tried for years. I screamed. I begged. No one listened. Grace. So what are we supposed to do? Just let him walk free. Daniel. Justice is not a straight road, Grace. Sometimes it runs uphill. Sometimes it runs out. Grace, angrily. I will not let him win, not after what he did to her. Montage. Grace trying to get help. Grace at a local TV station being told they do not cover religious controversies. Her email inbox is filling with polite rejections from journalists. A church elder closing his office door in her face. Social media comments calling her attention-seeking and bitter. Old friends unfollowing her quietly, church building. Evening. Grace stood at the back of the sanctuary. It was quiet now. No voices, no violins, no aisle. She walked toward the front, paused at the altar. The altar once felt sacred. Now, it was a place where betrayal wore a collar. She reached down and touched the floor where she had stood in her dress. Grace, softly. I thought you were the voice of God. Int. Grace's apartment. Next morning her phone buzzed. Another message. A journalist reply. Thanks for your message. Without documented proof or living victims, we cannot pursue the story further. She placed the phone down, sank into the couch. Daniel entered. He saw the exhaustion. Daniel. Sleep. Grace. I cannot. Every time I close my eyes, I see him, smiling, like he won. Daniel. He is not the story. She is. Grace. Then why does it feel like she lost? Cemetery, Elena's grave, sunset. The headstone was clean. A fresh lily rested on it. Grace stood there, arms folded. Grace, quietly. Mom, they do not believe me. Not all of them. Some think I'm angry. Some think I want attention. A breeze moved through the trees. Start from images, Grace. But I remember something. When I was 6, you were crying in the bathroom. I asked why. And you said, sometimes grown-ups get hurt too. She placed a hand on the stone. Grace, I wish you had told me everything, but maybe you did. In silence. In tea, coffee shop. Next day, Grace sat with a female church member, Sister Miriam in her 40s, kind eyes, quiet voice. Miriam, Elena taught me to pray. I used to spend evenings with her. She was the first person who ever told me I mattered. Grace, hopeful. You believe me? Miriam nods. I always believed her. But I was scared. I was young. The church told me to keep quiet. They said it would protect the ministry. She reached across the table and squeezed Grace's hand. Miriam, do not stop, even if no one follows. Int, Grace's apartment. Night. Grace sat at her laptop. Blank screen. Then she began to type. My name is Grace, and I have something to say about the man who nearly married me. She paused, breathed, typed again. He was my pastor, but he was not my shepherd. When no one gives you a voice, you must build your own rain poured outside. The walls echoed with silence. David sat at the edge of his bed, still wearing the wedding suit pants, now wrinkled. He stared at his phone. Grace's blog post was open. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Why would she post this now? He's a man of God. This is character assassination. We always knew something wasn't right about Pastor James. He rubbed his temple. Sometimes betrayal comes quietly, not as a dagger, but as doubt. Int, church hall. Next morning the elders had gathered. 6 men, 2 women, long table, Bibles closed, faces tense. Church elder 1. She posted it online. Now it is everywhere. What are we going to do? Church elder 2. Deny everything. No formal charges were ever filed. Sister Miriam, shaking her head. We cannot bury this. This is not just about one man. It is about every woman we silenced. Deacon Joseph, the community is watching, and this church is already bleeding. Grace's apartment. Later that day, Daniel looked over Grace's shoulder at her laptop. Comments scrolled down like water. Daniel, you opened the floodgates. Grace, I did not expect this many people to respond. She scrolled. He did the same to my cousin. I was 13. I stayed silent. I left the church because of him. Thank you for speaking. Grace, quietly. Why didn't they come forward before? Daniel, they were waiting for someone brave enough to be first. Int local grocery store. Evening. Grace pushed a cart. People looked at her. Some nodded, some whispered. One woman turned away quickly. Narrator, truth makes people uncomfortable, not because it is ugly, but because it forces them to choose. Int, David's apartment, same evening. David sat with his sister, Alma, who had just returned from abroad. Alma, I read the blog. I also spoke to 2 women, different churches, same pattern. David, I loved her. I was going to marry her. Alma, then love her now, not just when it's easy, but when she needs someone to believe her. David said nothing. Int church, next day, closed doors. Meeting Pastor James sat at the table, his face pale, no more fire, just fatigue. Church elder 1, you are to step down, indefinitely, pending full review. Pastor James, you are turning your back on 30 years of ministry. Deacon Joseph, you turned your back on the truth. Pastor James, none of you would be here without me. Sister Miriam, and she would still be alive if not for you. Int, Grace's apartment, night. A knock at the door. Grace opened it slowly. David stood there, soaked in rain. She did not speak. David, I read every word, twice. She stepped aside, letting him in. David, I do not know how to process it all. He was like a father to me. Grace, softly. He was like a knife to her. He sat on the couch, quiet, heavy. David, did you ever feel unsafe with him? Grace, after a pause. Yes, but I did not have the language for it until now. David, choking. I am sorry. I should have stood beside you the moment you said something. Grace nods. You still can. Int. Church. Following Sunday. The church was full, not for a wedding, not for praise, but for reckoning. Daniel stood beside Grace in the second row. David sat behind them. A new speaker took the pulpit. Speaker. Today we do not preach, we confess. We listen, we begin again. Int. Pastor's office. That night, Pastor James packed his books. The room was dim. He picked up a photo of him and a younger Elena. He stared. No words. Only the weight of consequences. Int. Grace's bedroom. Same time, Grace sat on her bed with her laptop open. She typed slowly. Some will say I destroyed a legacy. I say, I saved one. My mother's narrator, closing this section. Betrayal comes in many forms, sometimes from a lover, sometimes from a pulpit. But truth has no loyalty to comfort. It will burn its way out, even through the ones we once loved most. Int. Small prayer room. Night. The lights were dim. A single candle flickered on a wooden table. The air smelled of oil and old paper. Grace sat alone in a circle of silence. She had not spoken in hours. Her hands rested on her lap, eyes closed, lips parted slightly, but no words came. Calm. There is a silence deeper than grief, a silence where the soul waits for something it cannot name. Flashback. Elena's bedroom. Years ago, young Grace stood by the door, watching her mother pray. Elena whispering, God, if you see me, speak to me. If you love me, free me. Tears rolled down her face. A Bible lay open beside her, a single verse circled in red. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Into prayer room. Return to present. Grace opened her eyes. She looked toward the small cross hanging on the wall. She whispered, Grace, did you see her? Nothing. Grace, do you see me now? The candle flickered suddenly, long and sharp, then went still. She stared. Her breath caught in her throat. Int. Daniel's room. Same night. Daniel sat upright in bed. He had not been asleep. He stared at the ceiling, heart heavy. Then, a sound, a whisper, but not from the room. It came from within. His sister's voice. Eleanor, soft echo. You kept me alive even when I was gone. Daniel gasped. His eyes filled. Daniel, shaken. Eleanor? But the room was still. Church. Early morning, Grace entered. The building was empty. No lights, no candles. Just the smell of wood and old hymns. She walked to the front, kneeled at the altar. She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. It was her mother's journal. She opened it slowly. Tears hit the page. Sometimes deliverance does not come as fire. Sometimes it comes as pages, whispers, and open wounds that finally close. Montage. Mysterious signs begin to appear. A woman who had once lied to protect Pastor James came forward with an old voicemail. A child, now grown, confessed that Pastor James used to touch people's shoulders too long during prayer. The local bishop, who had ignored Eleanor's letters years ago, stepped down publicly after her story resurfaced. And on a wall behind the old pulpit, when water leaked from a pipe, it left a streak, a shape that many said looked like a weeping woman. People started whispering, Eleanor is speaking. Church hall, late evening. Grace sat with Sister Miriam and Daniel. Miriam, there are things I have never told anyone, things he said to me during confession. He manipulated scripture, twisted it like a rope around my neck. Daniel, gently, do not carry that alone anymore. Grace, we speak, we shine light, even if it burns. Narrator, what the fire touches, it does not always destroy. Sometimes it refines. Church basement. 2 days later, Grace, Daniel, and a few volunteers cleaned out old storage boxes, old bulletins, sermon tapes, handwritten notes. One box marked Confidential, 2006, caught her attention. She opened it. Inside were counseling records, Eleanor's name, others too, letters from women who had once asked for private prayer meetings, notes taken by someone. None followed up, none addressed. Grace, stunned. He kept them. He never destroyed the paper trail. Daniel whispers. He thought he was untouchable. Police department. The next day, Grace handed over the files. Detective. This changes everything. The truth does not expire. It may sleep, but it never dies. Church. Midweek service. Later that week, the pews were filled again. But it was not joy on their faces. It was awe, a holy fear. The guest speaker stood at the pulpit. Guest pastor. For years, the voice of the oppressed was silenced, but God hears, and he moves. He paused. Guest pastor, this house will no longer be a shelter for wolves. This will be a place of healing, a place of fire. People wept. People stood. Hands raised, hearts open. Grace sat in the third row, eyes closed, tears streaming. Grace, whispered prayer. Let her rest. Dream sequence, Grace's mind. Eleanor stood by a river, wearing white, peaceful, smiling. She turned to Grace. Eleanor, you freed me, now live. She stepped into the water and disappeared in the light. An open mic was set up. Survivors came forward. He told me God would be disappointed if I told anyone. I believed him for 10 years. Then Grace spoke, and I remembered my voice. Man, older. I knew, but I said nothing. Today, I ask for forgiveness. Grace wrote a final post on her blog. We prayed for miracles, and maybe this was one. Not a burning bush, not parted seas, but voices rising like incense, and truth falling like rain. She hit publish. Then she shut the laptop and smiled softly. Grace returned to the candlelit room, but this time, Danielle sat beside her. Miriam knelt on the other side. Behind them, others. The room was full, not with noise, but presence. Deliverance is not the absence of pain. It is the redemption of it. It does not erase the past. It lifts it, transforms it, and plants it like a seed. From the ashes of betrayal, a forest of freedom can rise, and in that sacred silence, when the candle flickers, some say they still feel her there, not haunting, but healed. The hall was not grand, no stained glass, no steeple, just folding chairs, warm coffee, and open hearts. A small group sat in a circle, 10 people, maybe more. Grace stood before them. A microphone rested in her hands, but her voice needed no amplification. Grace, my name is Grace, and for most of my life, I believed the silence made me safe, but it didn't. It only made space for lies to grow. She paused, looked down at her feet, then back up, stronger. Grace, my mother never got justice in court, but in truth, she got something more. She got to be believed. Justice is not always a verdict. Sometimes it is a village choosing to remember rightly. Church building. Later that week, the old portrait of Pastor James had been removed. In its place, a framed quote, "Light does not ask permission to enter. It breaks in." Daniel stood beneath it, arms crossed. Daniel, to Grace, you did what I couldn't. You brought her back, not in body, but in truth. Grace, quiet. She brought herself back. I just finally opened the door. Park, sunset. Grace walked alone down a tree-lined path. Children played nearby. Laughter rang out in the background. She stopped at a bench. Saturday breathed. Beside her, an old woman nodded kindly. Old woman, your story, it saved my niece. She left her pastor's house last week. She said, if Grace can speak, so can I. Grace turned, stunned. Old woman, you didn't just tell the truth. You gave it to others. Grace smiled. For the first time in months, genuinely church, small room, night. A small prayer group gathered, no titles and no hierarchy. Grace lit a candle. Everyone followed. One by one, no one spoke. But the silence was full. Narrator, from the ruins of betrayal, she rebuilt a place for light. And this time, there would be no shadows. Grace's room. Night. Grace stood by her window, looking out at the quiet street. The candle on her desk flickered beside her laptop. The screen glowed faintly. The blog post still open. Thousands of comments, some angry, some confused, but many filled with gratitude, stories, confessions, prayers. She placed a hand over her heart. Then she looked into the camera. Grace, calm, heartfelt. If you have been silent, I want you to know you are not alone. You are not weak. And your story, it matters. Narrator, gentle. Maybe this story reminded you of something. Maybe someone once told you to keep quiet, to stay small, to forgive without healing, to pretend nothing happened. But silence is not peace. Minimal setup, breaking the fourth wall. Grace sat in a chair, warm lighting, soft background, direct eye contact with the viewer. Grace, directly to audience. I shared my story because I needed to breathe again. I needed to look in the mirror and not see shame. And I needed others to know. They were never crazy, never alone, never voiceless. She paused. Grace, if this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone or of something still buried deep inside, please talk to someone. Speak. Write. Cry if you need to. But do not carry it in silence anymore. You may not be Grace, but you may know someone like her, a sister, a cousin, a friend, someone who went quiet after the wrong kind of touch, someone who stopped going to church, but never told you why. Reach out, ask, believe them. Community center, montage, a teenage girl opening up to her teacher, a father apologizing to his daughter for not listening years ago, a pastor standing at the pulpit, confessing to protecting silence instead of victims, a woman sharing a post online that simply reads, "Me too, I believe her." Grace, voiceover. I did not expect justice to come from courts or crowds. I hoped for something smaller, a ripple, a moment of stillness where someone says, "I hear you." Grace leaned forward slightly. Grace, if you believe stories like mine should be told, if you believe the silence should break, then please do one small thing today, like this video. Share it. Comment your thoughts. Tell us your story if you feel safe. Or just say, "I believe you." Even that can change someone's day. Narrator, calm, low. Algorithms do not change the world. People do. But when you click, when you comment, when you subscribe, you give these stories power. You tell the platform, this matters. If you are hurting, please reach out. If someone trusts you with their pain, listen. If this story moved you, share it. Tell us below. What did this story make you feel? What truth are you ready to speak? Watch our next story. She returned to the same church that ruined her, but this time, she didn't come alone. Wind in her hair, a Bible tucked under her arm, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Narrator, final words. You have watched a story of pain, of loss, of truth, and of fire. Now, it is your turn to speak, to act, to believe, and maybe to heal.